first met in person with Mary E. in the summer of 2007. I had arranged with her husband of 15 years, Terrence, to see her for an interview. Mary had initially agreed since I was not a newsman, but rather an amateur writer for gathering information for a few early college assignments. And if all went according to plan, I could get some pieces of fiction from her and make a story. We scheduled the interview for a particular weekend when I was in Chicago on unrelated business, but at the last moment, Mary changed her mind and locked herself in the couple's bedroom, refusing to meet with me. For half an hour, I sat with Terrence as we camped outside the bedroom door. I listened and taking notes while he attempted fruitlessly to calm his wife. The things Mary said made little sense but fit with the pattern I was expecting. Though I could not see her, I could tell from her voice that she was crying, and more often than not, her objections to speaking with me centered around an incoherent debauchery on her dreams, her nightmares. Terence apologized profusely when he ceased the exercise, and I did my best to take it in stride. Recall that I wasn't a reporter in search of a story, but merely a curious young man in search of information. Besides, I thought at the time I could perhaps find another similar case if I put my mind and resources to it. Mary E. was the sysop for a small Chicago-based bulletin board system in 1992 when she first encountered Smile.jpg, and her life changed forever. She and Terrence had been married for only 5 months at that point. Mary was one of an estimated 400 people who saw the image when it was posted as a hyperlink on the BBS. Though she's the only one who has spoken openly about the experience, the rest have remained anonymous or perhaps even dead. In 2005, when I was only in 10th grade, Smile.jpg was first brought to my attention by my burgeoning interest in based web phenomena. Mary was the most often cited victim of what is sometimes referred to as Smiledog. The being Smile.jpg is reputed to display what caused my interest, other than the obvious macabre elements of the cyber legend and profusely towards such things, was the sheer lack of information, usually to the point that people don't believe it even exists other than as a rumor or hoax. It's unique because the entire phenomenon centers on a picture file. That file is nowhere to be found on the internet. Certainly many photo-manipulated simulacra litter the web, showing up with the most frequency on sites such as the image board 4chan, particularly the X-focused paranormal subboard. It is suspected these are fakes simply because they do not have the effect the true Smile.jpg is believed to have, namely sudden onset temporal lobe epilepsy and acute anxiety. This purported reaction in the viewer is one of the reasons a phenomenon like Smile.jpg is regarded with such disdain, since it's painfully absurd, though depending on whom you ask, the reluctance to acknowledge Smile.jpg's existence might be just out of fear as it is out of disbelief. Neither Smile.jpg nor Smiledog is mentioned anywhere on Wikipedia, though the website features articles on such perhaps more scandalous shock sites as Hello.jpg or Two Girls One Cup. Any attempts to create a page pertaining to Smile.jpg is summarily deleted by any of the encyclopedia's many admins. Encounters with Smile.jpg are the stuff of internet legend. Mary's story is not unique. There are unverified rumors of Smile.jpg showing up in the early days of Unset, and even one persistent tale that in 2002 a hacker flooded the forums of human satire website Something Awful with a deluge of Smiledog pictures, rendering almost half the forum's users at the time of epilepsy. It is also said that in the mid to late 90s that Smile.jpg circulated on Sunset as an attachment of chainmail with the subject line, "Smile, God loves you." Yet, despite the huge exposure of these stunts would generate, there are very few people who admit to having experienced any of them, and no trace of the file or any link has ever been discovered. Those who claim to have seen Smile.jpg often weakly joke that they are far too busy to save a copy of the picture to their hard drive. However, all alleged victims offer the same description of the photo. A dog-like creature, usually described as appearing similar to a Siberian husky, illuminated by the flash of the camera, sits in a dim room. The only background detail that is visible is a human hand extending from the darkness near the left side of the frame. The hand is empty but is usually described as beckoning. Of course, most attention is given to the dog or dog creature, as some of the victims are more certain than others about what they claim to have seen. The muzzle of the beast is repeatedly split in a wide grin, revealing two rows of very white, very straight, very sharp, very human looking teeth. This is, of course, not a description given immediately after viewing the picture, but rather a recollection of the victims who have claimed to have seen the picture endlessly repeated in their mind's eye during the time they are, in reality, having epileptic fits. These fits are reported to continue indeterminately, often while the victims sleep, resulting in very vivid and disturbing nightmares. These may be treated with medication, though in some scenes it seems more effective than others. Mary E., I assumed, was not on effective medication. That was why, after my visit to her apartment in 2007, I sent out feelers to several folklore and urban legend oriented news group websites and mailing lists, hoping to find the name of a supposed victim of Smile.jpg who felt more interested in talking about his experiences. For a time, nothing happened, and at length, I forgot completely about my pursuits since I had begun my freshman year of college and was quite busy, simply. Mary contacted me via email, however, near the beginning of March 2008. The letter goes as so. Dear Mr. L, I am incredibly sorry about my behavior last summer when you came to interview me. I hope you understand that it was not your fault, but rather my own problems that led me to act out as I did. I realize that I could have handled the situation more decorously. However, I hope you will forgive me. At the time, I was afraid. You see, for 15 years I had been haunted by Smile.jpg. Smiledog comes to me in my sleep every night. I know that sounds silly, but it's true. There is an infatuable quality about my dreams, my nightmares, that makes them completely unlike any real dreams I have ever had. I do not move and do not speak. I simply look ahead, and the only thing ahead of me is the scene from that horrible picture. I see the beckoning hand and I see Smiledog. It talks to me. It's not a dog, of course, though I am not quite sure what it really is. It tells me it will leave me alone if only I do as it asks. All I must do it says, is spread the word. That is how it phrases its demands, and I know exactly what it means. It wants me to show it to someone else. And I could. The week after my incident, I'd received in mail a mailing envelope with no return address. Inside was a 3 by 2-inch floppy disk. Without having to check, I simply knew what it was. Though for a long time about my options, I could show it to a stranger, a coworker, I could even show it to Terrence, as much as the idea disgusted me. And what would happen then? Well, if Smiledog kept its word, I could sleep. Yet, if it lied, what would I do? And who was to say something worse would not come for me if I did as the creature asked? So I did nothing for 15 years, though I kept the disc hidden amongst my things. Every night for 15 years, Smiledog has come to me in my sleep and demanded that I spread the word. For 15 years I had stood strong, though there have been hard times. Many of my fellow victims on the BBS board where I first encountered Smiledog stopped posting. I heard some of them committed suicide. Others remained completely silent, simply disappearing off the face of the web. There are the ones I worry about the most. I sincerely hope you will forgive me, Mr. L, but last summer when you contacted me and my husband about an interview, I was near the breaking point. I decided I was going to give you the floppy disk. I do not care if Smiledog was lying or not. I wanted it to end. You were a stranger, someone I had no connection with, and I thought I would not feel sorrow when you took the disc as part of your research and sealed your fate. Before you arrived, I realized what I was doing. plotting to ruin your life. I cannot stand the thought, and in fact, I still cannot. I am ashamed, Mr. O, and I hope that this warning will delude you further from the investigation of Smile.jpg. You may in time encounter someone who is, if not weaker than I, then wholly more depraved. Someone who will not hesitate to follow Smiledog's orders. Stop while you are still whole. Sincerely, Mary E. Terrence contacted me later that month with the news that his wife had killed herself. While cleaning up various things she'd left behind, closing email accounts and the like, he happened upon the above message. He was a man in shambles. He wept as he told me to listen to his wife's advice. He found the disc, he revealed and burned it until it was nothing but a stinking pile of black plastic. The part that disturbed him, however, was how the disc had hissed as it melted, like some sort of animal, he said. I will admit that it was a little uncertain about how to respond to this. At first I thought perhaps it was a joke, with the couple blatantly playing with the situation in order to get a rise out of me. A quick check of several Chicago newspaper online obituaries, however, proved that Mary was indeed dead. There was, of course, no mention of suicide in the article. I decided, for a time at least, I would not further pursue the subject of Smile.jpg, especially since I had finals coming up at the end of May. But the world has an odd way of testing us. Almost a full year after I'd returned from my disastrous interview with Mary E, I had received another email. The email goes as follows. Hello. I found your email address through a mailing list. Your profile said you were interested in Smile.dog. I have saw it. It is not as bad as everyone says. I've sent it to you here. Just spread the word. The final line chilled me to the bone. According to my mail client, there was one file attached called, naturally, Smile.jpg. I considered downloading it for some time. It was most likely a fake. I imagined, and even if it weren't, I was never wholly convinced of Smile.jpg's peculiar powers. Mary E's account had shaken me, yes, but she was probably mentally unbalanced anyways. After all, how could a simple image do what Smile.jpg was said to accomplish? What sort of creature was it that could break one's mind with only the power of the eye? And if such things were patently absurd, then why did the legend exist at all? If I downloaded the image, if I looked at it, if Mary turned out to be correct, if Smile.dog came to me in my dreams demanding I spread the word, what would I do? Would I live my life as Mary had, fighting against the urge to give in until I died? Or would I simply spread the word, eager to be put to rest? If I had chosen the latter route, how could I do it? Whom would I burden in turn? If I went through with my earlier intention to write a short article about Smile.jpg, I decided I could attach it as evidence. Anyone who read the article, anyone who took interest, would be affected. And even assuming the Smile.jpg attached to the email was genuine, would I be capricious enough to save myself in that manner? Could I spread the word? Yes, I could. Well, that's another classic story off the list, and I gotta say, it's good to be back reading these stories. However, this story, while it is a classic, it is not perfect. Let me explain. Now, there is one complaint that I have about this story, and it is, and probably you could tell throughout the video, is the grammar. Not so much how everything's worded, but the use of really, really big descriptive words. Now, it is good to have, descriptive words, when you're writing something in a story, but there's a reason why you only use it every once in a while. In this story, there is a lot of big words, and it is distracting, honestly. It just takes you out of the whole experience. And the thing is, I noticed that throughout the story, the author wrote pretty much halfway the story with big words, and then towards the end, he just gave up. And it's really jarring and frustrating when you're trying to read it, whether you're trying to read it to yourself or, like this, recording a video. It is really difficult when you're using, big words constantly, Like in the beginning, there was like, in a paragraph, there was like one after the other, and it's like, bro, come on, I'm just trying to read the story. Like this isn't a fucking novel. It's honestly really distracting, and I hope the author did improve on this, and I hope anyone who's writing a story doesn't overuse big words, as this story did. So that was one big flaw that I had with this story, or big problem that I had with this story. Now it is kind of very jarring though, with this story though, that the fact that there's no, any sort of real news outlets, or really that much information. Like, all right, there's a story that an image kills you, yet somehow there's no information on it. Like there's info, but at the same time there's no info. It's just like, if something like this were to happen, there would be info saved on it, right away. There would be, like a Wikipedia article dedicated to this phenomenon. But the fact that there is none is just, it's kind of absurd. And there's only, people's accounts to sort of go along with it. Like, for me, it doesn't make sense that there would be no, like, at least a website or a page dedicated to, this supposed Smile.jpg, where apparently if you look at the image, you either go insane, or you go and kill yourself, or you mysteriously disappear. Like, really, there would be no, saved page or article anywhere? Come on. Especially in this day and age, there would be something like that saved. Now, the image itself, it's kind of scary. There's two versions. There's this one, the one that came with the one that matches up with the story more. And then there's this one where it's much more, I guess, gruesome, or much more worse. Now, there was one thing that this story didn't mention that I kept hearing about when people talked about this story, but supposedly the image gets worse, and I guess this is what the image is supposed to look like after you sort of refuse to spread the word. So that's, I guess, I don't know if this story, you know I don't know where this idea that the image gets worse, as nowhere in the story, it ever brings that up, that it, gets worse. Or even another thing that I've heard, that apparently the image started with the devil, and yet nothing of that is mentioned. So I don't know where those two, ideas came from, that the image gets worse and that apparently it started with the devil. So I don't know where that came from as well. Now, of course, I do like the character of Mary E. I do like how the fact that, the whole reason why she agreed to do the interview was to sort of free herself, but then at the last moment she, had a change of heart, where she realized that she couldn't ruin someone's life. She didn't want someone having the same life they did, and I do like that. That is very interesting character, and I like how she never even showed it to her husband or anyone close to her. I do like that at the last moment she decided, you know what, I'm gonna keep living with this burden, and I'm not gonna ruin someone else's life. And which makes you hate the ending even more, where the main character sort of selfishly looks at the image and then spreads it. Which, that, I mean, the ending, it's a great twist, but it really makes you hate the main character. And just, I don't know, I and if that was the intention of the story, then good job on making me hate the main character. So yeah, I gotta say the characters in this story were good. I guess if you want to hate the main character, then you did a good job. As for the character Mary E, I think she's a great character. That was an interesting, neat little arc that she had in this story. Now, lastly, the story. Is the story creepy? I mean, it's all right. I mean, it's definitely, got that, classic legend, like, oh, if you look at this image, you bad luck happens to you, or, it's scary. It does remind me a lot of the Ring, where if you see this video, you die in 7 days. If you don't show it to someone else, I do, get the inspiration from there. As for the story itself, I mean, the image itself, like I said, it's not really that scary. I mean, it's just I mean, it's a little creepy, but it's not something that'll give you nightmares. Uh, but the story itself, I mean, it's just your typical DeMille, haunted image. You gotta spread it, otherwise the monster will come get you. And yeah, it's just, it's all right, but it's nothing too, too scary. It's the reason why Smiledog was never really one of my favorites. When I was getting into the horror genre, Smiledog was never really, I mean, he stood out there. He was brought up a lot, but he was never really my favorite, just because, just your simple, scary image, and that was it, really. But anyways, that was Smile.dog. So yeah, let me know what you guys think of the story. Is it a good story? I think it's all right. It's nothing too spectacular, but it's a classic, so I'll give it that. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Don't forget to check out my other videos and my other social media. And with that being said, I am out.